London Beyond Time and Place presents Ghosts of the East End, the ghosts of Jack the Ripper and his victims. London has many ghosts. Just like any other area, the East End of London is full of tales and legends of apparitions and spectres. Today we are going to look at several of these stories that are connected to the notorious Jack the Ripper and his victims. The Ripper murders occurred in Whitechapel and Spitalfields in the autumn of 1888, so most of these ghosts are connected to the murder sites and the surrounding area. If you dare to visit these sites, you can take the self-guided Jack the Ripper walk by London Beyond Time and Place. Now, let us go to some of these haunted places and see if we can meet a ghost or two. The ghost of Mary Ann Polly Nichols. The first canonical victim of the murderer known as Jack the Ripper was Mary Ann Polly Nichols, a 45-year-old woman who was murdered in Bucks Row, Whitechapel, on the 31st of August, 1888. Bucks Row was renamed Durward Street after the murder. The author Elliot O'Donnell, famous for writing about and seeing ghosts, described an apparition that was often seen in Durward Street as a huddled figure like that of a woman, emitting from all over it a ghostly light, frequently to be seen lying in the gutter. The ghost of Annie Chapman. The ghost of Annie Chapman, the second Ripper victim, seems to be the most active of all of them. Her ghost was seen in various spots in and around Hanbury Street, where she was killed on the 8th of September 1888. In the 20th century, a Mr. Chapman, who shares the same name with the victim, lived at Hanbury Street 29, where the murder took place. On several occasions, spread over a number of years, he saw a man and a woman disappearing along the passageway, and it was always the same pair. He also said that these apparitions would usually occur in the very early hours of morning, during the autumn months, which would fit the time, the 8th of September, when Annie Chapman was killed and disemboweled at this place. The fact that she and Mr. Chapman share the same name is even more fascinating. It is also said that in the 1930s, a witness could hear her being murdered, but could see nothing at the side. There was also the sighting of a headless phantom, but these apparitions have stopped since 29 Hanbury Street has been demolished. Since then, workers in the Truman Brewery buildings that occupied this site reported a strange chill on the anniversary of Annie's death and saw the ghostly figure standing on the spot where she was killed. If you cannot meet Annie's ghost there, you can find her haunting another site that is still standing today, the 10 Bells pub on the corner of Commercial Street and Fournier Street, where she allegedly had a drink on the morning of her murder. In the 1970s, the landlord of the pub reported of strange gusts of cold wind that came out of nowhere and a radio that switched on and off. He claimed that it was Annie Chapman's ghost. She, or whoever that poltergeist may have been, did obviously not like the 1970s radio program. Annie did the pub a good favor marketing-wise, as the pub had changed its name to Jack the Ripper during that time. Nowadays it is called the 10 Bells again. The pub had had trouble with other Victorian ghosts throughout the last century, among them a ghostly old man, but there was probably no or little connection to the Ripper. The ghost of Mary Jane Kelly. Mary Jane Kelly, the Ripper's last canonical victim, was also said to have drunk there and to stand outside the 10 Bells in order to attract customers. She lived in Miller's Court off Dorset Street, just opposite Christchurch. Dorset Street is no more. There is now a building standing on where the street and Miller's Court, where she had a room, used to be. She was killed on the morning of the 9th of November 1888, and it is said that in the following months her ghost could still be seen entering Miller's Court. A strange aspect of her murder is that several witnesses claimed to have seen and spoken to Mary Kelly on the morning of the 9th of November, when in fact she must have already been murdered. So, did they talk to the ghost of Mary Kelly, who began walking the streets hours after her death? Adjacent to the 10 Bells pub is Christchurch, Spitalfields, designed by Nicholas Hawksmoor. Each of the Ripper's victims and the murderer himself have looked at this building on a daily basis. Hawksmoor's buildings have become famous for their pagan symbols and their connections to mystery and crime. There have also been ghost sightings at Christchurch and the other Hawksmoor churches. If you are interested in the connection of his churches to the Ripper murders and other crimes, as well as other mysterious and gruesome stories, subscribe to our website londonbeyondtimeandplace.com, because very soon we will be offering a self-guided walk along his churches. The Ghost of Elizabeth Stride. The night of the 30th of September became known as the night of the double murder, as the Ripper murdered 2 women that night. The first woman killed on the night of the 30th of September 1888 was Elizabeth Stride. Elizabeth was not mutilated, as the murderer was probably disturbed when committing the crime. It is believed that this is the reason why he killed another woman that night and mutilated her. Liz Stride was killed in Berners Street in Whitechapel and seemed to have struggled with the murderer. It is said that in the months after she was murdered, her screams could be heard in Berners Street. Unfortunately, nobody had helped her when she had screamed for her life on the night of her death. The Ghost of Catherine Eddowes. The second victim that night was killed in the city of London, just on the border to the East End. Her name was Catherine Eddowes. She died in Mitre Square, and it is said that her mutilated body can still be seen on the anniversary of her death in the gutter. This may have been before Mitre Square was redeveloped in recent years. The cobblestones of yore are gone. The square has changed beyond recognition since then, including the former Ripper Corner, where Catherine became the killer's 4th victim. But if you dare to visit Mitre Square on a dark September night, you might glimpse a spectral figure lying on that very spot. And if you go there on the night of her death, you might see the corner where she died glow red. The Ghost of the Murderer. But not only the Ripper's victims are said to haunt the area. Several suspects have been seen or sensed. In the cellar of the White Hart pub on Whitechapel High Street, a medium once sensed the presence of a man who had a lot of hatred against women in him, and the name George was picked up by the medium. That George was George Chapman, whose real name was Severin Klosowski. He worked as a barber in the cellar of the White Hart pub in the 1890s, and became famous for poisoning 3 of his wives. Some believe that he might have been the Ripper. The White Hart pub is also close to the former George Yard buildings, where Martha Tabram was murdered on the 7th of August 1888. Though not considered a Ripper victim, some believe her to be murdered by the same man as the canonical 5. The final spot is not in the East End. In fact, it is a couple of miles west, Westminster Bridge. On New Year's Eve, a figure is said to emerge from the shadows and throw itself into the Thames. Where is the Ripper connection, you might ask? The legend goes that Jack the Ripper killed himself there on New Year's Eve of 1888 by plunging into the river and was therefore never caught. There is a true story behind that. Ripper suspect Montague John Druitt drowned in the Thames. Montague John Druitt was first mentioned as a likely suspect for the Whitechapel murders in 1894 by Chief Constable Melvin Macnaghten, who wrote in his memorandum that Druitt was said to be a doctor of good family who disappeared at the time of the Miller's Court murder and whose body was found in the Thames on 31st of December, or about 7 weeks after that murder. He was sexually insane, and from private information I have little doubt that his own family believed him to have been the murderer. From nowadays' point of view, it is difficult to believe that Druitt was Jack the Ripper for various reasons, which would be too much to be explained here in detail. I hope you enjoyed these ghostly tales. If you are interested in visiting all these sites, you can take the self-guided Jack the Ripper walk by London beyond time and place. Do you have any ghost stories that you want to share? Is there any Ripper-related ghost sighting that you want to mention? Leave your story in the comments below. If you go to these haunted places and meet a ghost or two, drop me a line. Or let me know and we can visit these sites together. Thank you very much.